So I'd like to start this webinar by respectfully acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we live, work and learn, and paying my respects to First Nations people and elders past, present and future. So I'm joining you today from Meanjin, from Brisbane, on the home of the Turrbal and Yagara people. And my name's Steve Williams. I am one of the program managers at the Office of Social Innovation at Central Queensland University, and I'm joining you from my home because I'm based in Brisbane and we're all in lockdown, as I'm sure many of you know. So today's session is so exciting for me to host this session with three amazing presenters, all about the circular economy. And we have chosen three incredible presenters who represent a really broad spectrum of the circular economy, from grassroots initiatives to an incredible entrepreneur to local government. So I'm going to introduce all of them individually in a second, but this session I think is going to be really, really valuable, and we're going to get a lot of learning from our incredible presenters today. So without further ado, Yasmin Grigiliunis is the award-winning CEO and co-founder of the world's biggest garage sale. Yasmin's on a mission to turn Australia's circular economy aspirations into reality, while also providing social good. Her Brisbane-based impact enterprise designs solutions to commercialise the circular economy, that's music to my ears, through the activation, not aviation, of dormant goods for good, while providing employment pathways and opportunities for disadvantaged youth. Yaz is living proof that we can make a positive impact on people's lives and the future of the planet. So welcome, Yaz. Thank you very much for making time to be here. Our next presenter is George Meacham. He's the coordinator of Waste and Recycling Strategy and Education at Rockhampton Regional Council, where he's responsible for driving the implementation of Council's 10-year waste strategy and its long-term goal of zero waste by 2050. So no pressure on you, George, just keep working. George's passion for community-based solutions began early in his career as a street collector and in-house bookkeeper with a workers' recycling cooperative in the UK. More power to you, George. Seeing the value of well-executed localised solutions, he became a chartered accountant and then spent the next 25 years applying his commercial and project management skills across a wide range of social purpose enterprises, from international development agencies, social enterprises, and in recent years finding a place within the state and local government sectors in Australia. And that's the work that we're going to hear from George about today, and in particular some great work we've been doing at the uni with Rockhampton Regional Council. So our last guest is Michelle Fisher. Thanks, Michelle, for joining us. She is the founder and coordinator of the Melbourne Repair Cafe Inner West, a place where people come to connect over a cuppa to share skills and learn DIY repairs for free. Michelle also co-founded Sharing Shed Melbourne, the city's first physically located library of things. What an amazing thing. Her passion builds on sustainability leadership and experience as a public policy advisor across state and federal public sectors. Michelle's passionate about community initiatives that reduce consumption through the sharing of abundance, and she served on the collective of Street Bank Australia, an online platform where goods can be loaned or given away to neighbours. And also on the collective of Permablitz Melbourne, who organise backyard blitzes, bringing together volunteers to create permaculture designed edible gardens. I'd love to know if that's still going, because I did some permablitzes here in Brisbane a few years ago, and they were really fantastic events. So welcome all. Now, the first person that we're going to hear from is Yasmin. So let me just forward my screen, and I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to hear Yaz's story in 10 minutes. I don't know how she's going to pack it all in, but here we go. Over to you, Yaz.
Thanks so much, Steve, and welcome. I too am coming from Turrbal and Yagara land here, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I would love to say thank you to everybody for the opportunity today, and I will do my best to share with you a very compacted version of our journey in circular economy. And ironically, tomorrow is our 8-year anniversary of the very first world's biggest garage sale back in 2013, held here in local Brisbane. And effectively, it was born from thinking I was solving a challenge of donor fatigue by raising money without asking people for money and capturing the dormant and idle assets in the community. And what it turned into was 500 people shopping a garage sale, but me understanding the customer opportunity around circular economy and the desirability to have visibility of where these things were going. And I know there's a lot of organizations out there that have bins around to put things in that allow you to capture product, but the very nature of the word bin denotes waste, and we see it as an asset and an item that we actually call surprise chain. And so world's biggest garage sale, I quit my job 4 years ago after running a number of garage sales each year as a volunteer. And when 10,000 people shopped one of our events, which I was still doing it as a hobby, by taking a month off my job a year to run an event, I realized the opportunity ahead. And it was around the social, people, planet, purpose philosophy, where community would really drive and be connected to the opportunities. And you'll have to excuse the noise in the background. I'm actually coming to you from Australia's only fully functional and first circular economy precinct that we opened a year ago. In fact, just before COVID shut the world down for the first time. We moved in the week later. And it was always a part of our strategy to open a precinct where community could come to be able to, in a central location, do all of the things that we're desiring: repair, renew, repurpose, remodel, rebuild, remanufacture, re-commerce, all the re's under one roof, because the disparate placement of all these opportunities is wonderful, that we've got so many enterprises now active in this economy. But the true growth opportunity is when we can be a single location where we're designing solutions for a more circular world. So our surprise chain comes in every day from community and businesses through large partnerships and through service-based models where we capture the dormant and idle assets, not like a transfer station that we might be familiar with, but a transformation station where people are employed and they actually rebuild, renew, remodel, and even redesign products through surprise chain, where we're creating things that might not have ever otherwise be created. So we have workshops, which you can clearly hear, rebuilding furniture from assets like pallets and metals and soft furnishings. And we're designing those products and actually placing them in the economy through our B2C or business to consumer, B2B, business to business, or even wholesale and resale retail chains. And that all sounds like really boring operational, but really what is our business about? Our business is about people. We have over 30 staff now employed in our circular economy precinct, and we're actually hurting a little today with the announcement of the shutdown for another 8 days within the Brisbane region. And of course we will stay safe, but many of our staff cannot do their jobs from home. So we will keep our doors open and continue to keep them employed through the ability to, in our warehouse, continue to rebuild products. As an enterprise in circular economy, we contribute by diverting assets and products from landfill in the very many millions of kilos now through our time. And we have wonderful partnerships with organisations like Officeworks and others, where we are actually capturing their products and taking the steward of that product. And as a product stewardship incubator, we are rebuilding and remodeling items and then actually providing data and analytics back to our partners so that they can start to redesign their products at the core. So we design out waste at the ultimate goal of being able to make more sustainable materials using those non-virgin assets. So I suppose along the way there have been many challenges, and for those of you out there starting your own circular economy enterprise, people first has always been our passion. Jobs is actually a really strong metric we measure, and we once upon a time relied on volunteers before we were a company. Well, now we're actually a jobs creation centre designed to create jobs and then to be able to fulfill the continuous supply of those jobs through our own revenue streams. We're not a charity, we're not a not-for-profit or a DGR enterprise. We are actually a profit-for-purpose company that wants to be able to create sustainable jobs, not just here in our local regions, in our local region, but by having a replicable model that can be picked up and placed in any location across this country, so that we can create jobs in those cities and regions. And that's really our ultimate utopia, is that we've designed a business model that allows for self-sustainable continuation of materials, but also continuation of jobs. As a social entrepreneur, there have been a lot of challenges, and I would encourage you to take the hard road and rather than the easy street, because we say a few things, and I want to leave people with a few takeaways today. As an enterprise that didn't even know how we would exist when we first started the company 4 years ago, we have taken an entrepreneurial focus, but a very business philosophical overlay to be able to be where we are today. We have self-funded and then accepted some capital and equity within our business model from investors who have been early adopters of the model that we have. And as a company that's grown almost 500% in revenue during the year of COVID, when it could have potentially shut our company down, we're now at a proof point to show that even in the most difficult of times, with the most limited of resources, that an enterprise like ours can actually be profitable, sustainable, and operationally efficient, to be able to then be investable, not like a data company, a typical software as a service company, but as an actual get your hands dirty enterprise from the ground up, be able to build people while we build our business. And so we have a very strong overlay of different ability staff within our enterprise. And while that's harder, it's worth it. And that hard is where we thrive. We love the difficult, we love the challenge, and we take a very agile nature to how we scale our enterprise. And it's really important that we take the imperfections of our entire workforce, just like we take the imperfections of our products, and we bring that it's not perfect and it's okay, and overlay that into everything we do. So while we meld products together, we also meld people together. And that's the biggest value of all, watching our staff and our team grow through these difficult, challenging times. And some key takeaways I'll leave you with is we have a few acronyms or easy to perhaps take in as a into the palette of how to summarize what we do. So we say effort plus execution equals evolution. That's a formula that we've designed and created internally. And the reason for that is lots of people come to us with what they think is not a lot of skill, no degree, no experience, no this, and they say, but I can't, I won't, I'm not. And we shatter that. We're a transformation station, as I said. So we say, when you make effort and you execute, then you evolve. And that's how our business has been able to do that. And we have a very simple do that philosophy, that being THAT. And it's trust, honesty, authenticity, and tenacity. And if you can do that, be trusted, be honest, authentic, and that means showing your whole self when you come to work, just like we see the whole self of products when we strip them down or decommission them or deconstruct them. When we see that and we have tenacity and we believe in impossible, then anything can be created, anything can be designed. And it really just takes that effort and execution to be able to evolve as a business. And we're just beginning as a company. We're just about to announce a capital raise, which is really exciting, to be able to help continue to fund and sustain jobs, create an entire body of new jobs. And within the next 3 to 6 months, we'll have over 50 people employed. We'll be the largest precinct of our kind in this hemisphere, and we'll be at a replication capability to be able to take this enterprise and its design into other regions and cities across this country and beyond. So watch this space. The world's biggest garage sale might be 8 years old tomorrow as a concept, but we are just beginning in terms of our own evolution. Thank you. Hopefully that's right on 10 minutes based on my timer.
That is perfect. Thank you. Yes. And happy birthday. I didn't realize it's such a big milestone. Thank you. So we're going to hear from the other presenters, and then I'll come back because I've scribbled some questions and I want to pick your brain after we've heard from everybody else. So over to you, George. If you could share your screen and share your slides, that would be fantastic.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, all good, thanks.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Well, hello everybody, and thank you, Yaz, that was fantastic. So yeah, look, my name's George. I work for the Rockhampton Regional Council. I'm heading up the strategy and education team in the context of waste and recycling. So I just wanted to really spend the 10 minutes just talking to how we've constructed our strategy for the next 10 years, because we've predicated the whole thing on building a circular economy. And it speaks to a lot of what Yaz was just talking to you there, really. But obviously, what we're coming from is we're a council, so we're working in a very different sort of paradigm. We are very much the enablers, and we can bring a lot of resource to the table and a lot of investment, a lot of energy, but we're not necessarily that on-ground, passionate social enterprise. But we need to sort of clear the space for those sort of opportunities to come to the table. And look, we're a regional centre in central Queensland, so there's not a lot of, we're starting from quite a low base. We can see fantastic things happening around the country. And one of the things that sort of we've said early doors in this conversation was like, well, how do we make it happen here in our region? Because there's no reason why it shouldn't. So, but just to talk quickly to our strategy, we've gone with our big, hairy, audacious goal of zero waste by 2050. I mean, that's actually what the state government has set themselves out for. That almost looks a little under ambitious. Things have been moving so fast in the waste sector. But hey, that's still one hell of a goal. And then obviously down the side there in those orange sort of circles, you'll see they're the sort of typical things that the industry has for a long time been sort of mindful of as sort of key principles. We have a waste hierarchy, we all understand that. We're looking for intergenerational equity, and the more we can sort of keep the money circulating local, then the better it is for local economy and local jobs, etc. But where we sort of veered off with this particular strategy was traditionally councils have really focused on, if you look at that pie chart there in section 2, really building that resource recovery capacity. So very capable at sort of running regional MRFs, at running landfills, transfer stations, putting that infrastructure in place. We're finding ways of making that happen. It's a very easy service model, but that's not a circular economy. So this time we decided, look, we really had to reach a lot better outside of that single paradigm. So they're the 3 areas that I was just going to quickly talk to. So in terms of behaviour change, what we meant by that was we definitely need a whole of community response. This can't be a council sort of saying, look, this is what we're doing, guys. It needs to be you know, how are we going to bring this entire community along on this journey with us? So in that context, we're in the process of rolling out like a brand identity that is a community-owned brand identity. It's not councils, it's about zero waste by 2050. But anybody can jump on board there. So the world's biggest garage sale could jump on board and start using this branding, this tagline, and start using these resources. And in that context, again, building in what I'm calling an impact community, and I've stolen that from somewhere and I can't remember where. Possibly good for the good or something. I saw it somewhere and went, that's perfect. Impact community, that's what I'm calling it. And that's our network of social enterprises, non-profits, environmental groups, all those people that are going to go into making this piece actually work for the whole region and not just being a council-driven endeavour. And then obviously we have our on-ground activities and projects and programmes, but we're really focusing them around changing specific behaviours, which is a very long, you know, I'm sure most of the people in the room are sort of familiar with sort of fundamentals of behaviour change. So the schools programme, for instance, is our sort of flagship programme at the moment, but we're really running it with a view to signing a school up in year 1. We'll work with their year 4 cohort for that first year. They will implement a whole range of changes. So imagine very similar to the war on waste sort of audit process. Get it all out, tip it all out on the pavement, create a baseline, and then go back in sort of the following term, remeasure again, look at the improvements. But then importantly, just going through that process and signs them up as a Recycling Hero school. But then we revisit year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. So then the upcoming students go through the same process, and each time they also find new ways of seeking that improvement and sharing with their school community. So we've got a number of programs like that that are really driving that whole behaviour change piece and getting the whole of the community to sort of really come along on board. And I'll talk very briefly to the Upcycle Village project, which we're working with CQU on at the moment. Then obviously building the resource capacity, that's the bit that we typically do pretty well. Look, we're a regional centre, so we have our own challenges up here. We're a long way from market. It's also, we have much smaller feedstocks of waste, so it's harder for us. We can't just put in a solution for solar panels here. We just simply don't have enough. So those are the sort of challenges that we really have to deal with. But look, we have quite a lot going on in our strategic space at the moment. We're looking for an energy to waste solution. We're looking for a solar panel solution. We've got a polystyrene processing piece of kit on a ship from China as we speak, and we've got a new regional MRF to build. But then the important third sector of that pie chart was really building that market development. And again, this is just this really where the circular economy sort of works or doesn't work as far as I'm concerned, because we can sort and process as much waste as we like, but if we haven't found a viable market for it, like I say, for a regional centre like us, where just the transportation cost back down to the southeast corner is just too onerous, we have to find local solutions. So our glass is a good example. We won't ever process our glass to the same quality that it can actually be upcycled, repurposed back into glass bottles. It's just not viable. We turn it into glass sand, we use it for asphalt production, etc., etc. So it's just, you have to tailor it to your needs, I guess. So our organics right now is obviously the low-hanging fruit. We're looking for a FOGO solution on the curbside. We're about to start a trial this month, in October, sorry. But the end product of that for us will be really helping to develop this agricultural corridor that's actually going to be sort of the result of this Rookwood Weir development on the Fitzroy Basin there. So really looking to sort of work hand in hand with the other regional opportunities that are going on. So I quickly mentioned the Upcycle Village. It's a project that we think really at the moment encapsulates everything that we're trying to do in this space. So we've identified a piece of space here at our major waste facility in Rockhampton, and initially it was just going to spec it up, put a spec together and go to market, and then it was just my good fortune really that I attended a social QSEC, Queensland Social Enterprise Council workshop, and it became obvious that a co-design process would just be a much better way to go, because then I could actually get the people who have the actual social need in our community into the conversation, people that actually came to the table with potential solutions. So for instance, it could be as simple as a furniture project, where we're taking furniture. We've engaged now the likes of the Binnies and Salvos, the people who have got that food stock. We're engaging with people who like Multicultural Association, who've got the training schemes. You can actually bring those cohorts through and do traineeships in construction or in woodwork or whatever we do. And then obviously we're also starting to connect with a lot of these service providers that could actually use some of that furniture in social housing or whatever. So that's just one example of where we're trying to drive that project, just by having a co-design process that involves the end users, rather than council just simply imposing their solution. So look, lessons very briefly. It's been an interesting one. We're 18 months into this journey, and it is a new approach for us. And we've seen a lot of other councils. We leapt quite early, and we've seen a lot of other councils take a similar approach. And we work quite closely with a lot of councils, the big regional players up and down the Queensland coast, but also the smaller councils that are around us. And we know that they're struggling with very similar issues. But what's been fascinating is that we're even back into 2019 when we wrote this, and we put sort of building a circular economy for our region on the front cover of the strategy. it still wasn't, it was something that everybody knew in the sector and across the literature, but it wasn't a sort of publicly sort of bandied around word particularly. And already now we can see that circular economy is getting built into pretty much everything now you pick up. So I guess one of the things we've had to really sort of focus on is making sure that we get that embedded in our own governance structures within council, within our next corporate plan, and make sure everybody, leadership down, everybody really understands what it actually means, because it's a really complicated, and just tackling something like our own internal procurement for a council that's got 1,200 employees is just an incredibly long journey. So really got to resource it well. But taking this behaviour change sort of principle has been really powerful, really has helped bring people along, really get in at ground level and really understand at that sort of micro level, but it's scalable. And then, yeah, look, just if I had to say anything to anybody in sort of starting on this journey, it would be to invest in your engagement. It's time consuming, it's a very specific set of skills. They're waste officers and managers, and we don't necessarily have that skill set, so we're suddenly fishing around. So there's a lot of energy in the room and a lot of will, but not necessarily the skill sets that we need. Cutting through with communications in a really noisy space is hard work, as we all know. So. But look, brilliant, really pleased with where we're taking this. We've come out of a cycle where we used to plan on a 3-year cycle. We put a 3-year plan in place, and then we review it after 3 years, and we go, kind of tick 3 of those things off and fail to tick the other 17. This is a much different approach. This is looking really long-term, setting up a really long-term visionary position of zero waste, and then looking to see actually what we can do over a 10-year span, which makes a huge difference.
Great. Thank you very much, George. That was fantastic. And if you could take your screen off sharing, and Michelle is now going to screen share hers after you've taken yours off. That was really fantastic. And again, I've scribbled down some questions because there's some very specific questions that I've got around working in local government and how that's been for you, relating to the zero waste goal and all the strategies that you've got. But first of all, we're going to hear from Michelle, and I'm really looking forward to this, hearing about the grassroots initiatives that Michelle's started and been involved with. So over to you, Michelle. Oh, you're on mute, I think.
The most popular phrase of the century. Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Yasmin and George. It was great to hear your contributions. And I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge as well that they've been a continuous and enduring people on the land and have been sustainable throughout. Okay, so what I'd like to do today is particularly speak to the audience of change makers in the room. I'll start by saying a bit about the Repair Cafe, but I really want to get on to the lessons I've picked up along the way. Okay, so what is the Repair Cafe? It's been around since 2016. It's currently on hold. Just before COVID hit, we ceased operations and we haven't come back for various reasons. There weren't very many repair cafes at the time that we started. We were one of 5. And then we grew it from an online presence just for promotion's sake to an in-person activity through cafes and community centers. And just to take you through what it looks like and feels like, people come along, bring their broken goods, they sit with fixers, and they get shown, hopefully, how to fix things. And where they can't, where they don't have the skills, they engage about their item and about the skills and about the community. And here you'll see at the bottom left is Karen Ellis, who's in the room from Mendip, Australia. Hello, Karen. And we get all ages. So it's just wonderful to see kids come along as well. And that's a little group of volunteers at the bottom, which change over the years as well. So when we started in 2016, people started coming along who were inspired as well about starting up their own repair cafe, and it quickly spread over about 2 years across the state. Some fixers became embedded in the Melbourne Repair Cafe and got a real hands-on feel of what it was like to run a cafe. Others came to visit and came away. In other cases, I would give talks at community centres and community groups to say what my experience was and to share resources. So it really did spread quite quickly. And then how it sits in the circular economy. It sits in this inner circle where the highest level of value can be maintained. And what that means is by repairing your goods, you reduce the need for natural resources, much of which is non-renewable. You limit the cost of having to manufacture new goods and distribute them across the nation or across the globe, because you're living quite local. You're avoiding things ending up in landfill because you're extending their durability and their use. And all of these contribute to greenhouse gas emissions and environmental degradation, so you're reducing that as well. And on the positive side, you're building the skills and you're building community, because these are very local initiatives. So you get to know your neighbors and you increase community resilience. It also has the potential to create livelihoods in people gaining skills of repair and becoming professional fixers as well. And it allows us to value what we cherish and find useful, both in terms of not having to replace them monetarily, but also to be able to extend the things that we have great sentimental value in. So the bulk of what I want to talk to you about, though, is what I've picked up along the way. First, I think it's really important to be clear about what your values are and how you want to operate in the space that you choose. For me, and there was a mention about PermaBlitz Melbourne, I am very much into permaculture, which is an ethics-based, science-informed design framework that is based on these three values, these ethics of caring for the earth, caring for people, including ourselves, and sharing the abundance and taking only what we need. So that feeds into everything I do at community level. And then my operating principles are these three at the bottom. So very much seeing relationships as core to any initiative, and preferably face-to-face, which is a challenge in these times. And I'm in Melbourne, I feel for you, Brisbane. But definitely face-to-face, because you can engage in a way you just can't do online. And also to focus on going across sectors. And by across sectors, I mean not just community group to community group, but also to look at other sectors around your traders associations, your local councils, churches, businesses. So there's a lot of sectors that you bring in, including academia, as we can see today, hosting this conference. So a lot of different areas of community we often overlook have a way to feed into an initiative. I'm also very interested in the local, and in many cases, the hyper-local, the neighborhood base, the suburbs, the local council area. And if you can develop an initiative that can work there, it's great if you can do it in a way that it can be replicated across other local areas. So scaling it, not big, but wide. And also, I deeply believe that we have such an abundance of things we know, do, and can share, and it's just unevenly distributed. So a lot of what I do is try to work on that equitable distribution. Now, I came across this quote from Milton Friedman a few years ago, and it's just really struck me how we're living in this space now where we need to grab off the shelves the models that are alternative ways of living, that we can pull them off the shelf and implement them so that we can deal with some of the challenges we're facing. And a lot of people have lost jobs. A lot of people can't leave their states. So we need to be able to rethink and look what a new normal looks like. So I think Repair Cafe is one of those things, but there are many others. I think you need to know your challenges when you're deciding what you want to do. And for Repair Cafe, there were the things in the linear economy about the take, make, buy, dispose, but also this disconnection people have from their community and in feeling valued themselves. So then once you're clear about what the challenges are that you want to focus on, it's then looking at the multiplicity of opportunities. And in this space, you can remanufacture things like precious plastic does. You can look at promoting very high quality, durable goods. You can look at promoting really free markets or other ways to gift things, so tapping into the gifting economy. And then you can look at repair initiatives like Repair Cafe. And these allow us to sort of cross the fence and connect with our neighbors, which is lovely. The next thing I'd really suggest people think about is, before you launch a new thing, think about joining an existing thing. It's not too hard to do something on your own when there's smooth, clear waters. It's much harder to go ahead if it's stormy seas. And we become fragmented as well if we're trying to do too many new things and we don't have enough people along for the journey. So to be able to push in the same direction in community is something I'd highly recommend you think through. But sometimes we don't have the model that you want to join, so you make it. When you're looking at creating a new initiative, look around. The globe is a big place and someone was bound to have thought of it. When I was first looking at Repair Cafe, I came across the Repair Cafe Foundation in England, in Sweden, Amsterdam rather. So there's someone has thought this idea up. So you just need to find some models out there and you can adapt them and make them suitable to your location, but stand on the shoulders of other giants. The other thing that gave me great comfort that I learned along the way is that in community, people come and go, and it can be quite frustrating because you feel like no one stays. But this idea of having a core, a set of collaborators and a crowd was really useful for me. And it's in the scale of your core working group is going to be small. It'll be 1%, it'll be 10 people at tops. And they're the ones that really push things through. Around that core, you have your collaborators who bring their skills to the table. So, and they may come and go a bit, and they may change, but they've got a lot of skill base that you can draw on when you need them. And then surrounding that at larger scale, at the 1,000 scale, is the crowd who are supporting, who are participating, who are promoting you, who are telling their friends around you, who are giving you donations. So there's a huge crowd there that you can also draw on to bring them into the collaborator circle and into the crowd circle. So these are permeable circles. So really helpful to remember that you are not alone, even when you feel like you are. And then when you're looking around about building this thing that you want to build, look to the 8 capitals. This shows that everyone has something to contribute. So an individual might have their fixing skills, but they might have other skills about organizing or about social media or about event management. There'll be people who have built capital, which is your venues that you could set up your initiative in and run your events. There's other sort of social capital. People have networks that they can help promote to. So just scan through the different capitals and think about how you can tap into that, that area to support your initiative. The 2 things, well actually there's 3 things here. There's, when you're looking at an initiative, the tests I'd run against it is it viable, is it sustainable, and is it replicable? So viable and sustainable is, will it work and will it endure? And replicable goes back to my scale at hyperlocal level. But these 2 things, so it's about, will this thing function? And really think about piloting something before you launch headlong into something. I mean, there are things I would have done differently in setting up the Repair Cafe, especially if the context was now, when it was widely understood what they were. But you need to be able to test out, you need to be able to pivot, you need to be able to try different things, and to draw people in and to show them what it feels and looks like, because that's what led to some of the dissemination of repair cafes across the state, is that people could come and see and look what it felt like and how it operated. So you need an operating model, and then you need to be not just financially sustainable, as these sort of 7 heads talk to, but sustainable in the sense of succession planning with your core group. So being able to think of different aspects of sustainability. And then to remember that you're not alone, you're part of an ecosystem. One of the things I used to say with repair cafes, people used to say, well, aren't you going to do people out of a business, all of the professional repairers? And I said, well, we're not a hospital, we're a clinic. So there are things that we're limited by the time and space that we have and the skill base that we have, that we can only do so much. And if you need something fixed that can't be done in that context, there are other professional repairers. What we tend to do is the things that would be tossed out as too expensive to even have a look at by a professional repairer. So you are part of an ecosystem, a wider collection of people who can actually assist. And the other thing I would highly recommend is there's a video called How Wolves Change Rivers, based in Yellowstone Park. And it's really good to look at that to see how one intervention can have a ripple effect that could change the course of a river. So if you haven't seen it, I do urge you to go and have a look. Oops, not now though, we'll come back to that. Oh, my timer's going off, so let me just get back to my, I've just had this link come up. And just quickly, just to finish off, Margaret Mead is often pointed to as, you know, the passionate individuals can be the only ones that change the world. And I think that is true, that you do need passionate individuals, but local, other places, government and corporations and businesses do play a role. So in the Repair Cafe, we've had local traders give us donations that helped us, you know, buy various tools and that type of thing. We've had a community centre funded by council that has given us the venue out of which we operate. And there are scales as well of government. So at the national level, for instance, we're looking at Right to Repair through the Productivity Commission. And there's the economic incentives about tax breaks, and that's mostly overseas. But we'll see, I imagine we'll see some of that locally as well. Now there's the things you need to start, which we won't really go into today, but I want to, don't forget to have fun and enjoy every moment on your journey. And let's create the new normal, which used to be the old normal.
Thanks, Michelle. Fantastic to hear from you. And I didn't think that we'd get to hear a Milton Friedman quote today, so good on you for busting out Milton. Or is it? Anyway, we won't comment because we're non-political. So, as the host, I am very fortunate that I get to ask the first questions because we've had a number of questions come in. But I'm going to kick off by asking Yaz, as a leader in the field, how do you, what advice would you have for large organisations? You know, we know there's lots of very large organisations out there that claim to be sustainable, that claim to be engaged in the UN SDGs, but they're not really doing much. You know, they're still not even recycling plastic bottles, let alone contributing to the circular economy. So, you know, as somebody with such a wealth of experience in this field, what would you advise those large organisations? Not only from the CEO down or whatever that their moniker might be, but from the ground up too.
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. And I would say we have a simple solution and something that really worked well for us. So if I share that from a contextual perspective, then it may well be able to ignite something in the audience today. So it was about 2 years ago, I was at the Helsinki World Circular Economy Forum, and I met someone from Officeworks there. He pinged me on the app and said, hey, can we talk? And at the time they were looking at a very large organization, or I would say like the Titanic or our Stability. There's lots of big organizations that fit into that category. And like the Titanic, really hard to steer it around the iceberg quickly. So I felt that at that World Circular Economy Forum, we had stability come together with agility. Now we're like a little tugboat, more agile, more capable of spinning, and the ability to say yes to something without the 7 layers of hierarchical challenge. So when stability and agility come together, our formula equals capability. And so I would say to those big organizations out there that have stability, and if you are agility within an organization, an entrepreneurial spirit, or someone desiring to be an entrepreneur one day, or just someone filled with passion, go out to people like Michelle and other repair cafes and look within your community at the doers who are on the ground right now executing, and see how your capabilities could potentially come together to allow for something to actually physically be done. And back then, 2 years ago, we didn't know what our partnership would look like. Officeworks had a problem and a desire to do something. We had a capability and a desire to do something, and we didn't know how it would work or what it would become. And we just came together and tested and evolved and did an MVP, or minimum viable product, and executed. And when stability came together with that agility, today we have a capability that's won awards across this country. So I would say GSD, get stuff done. I'll change the S for today's politically correct recording. So GSD for the SDGs, just go in and get it done, find people, and it comes back to what Michelle said. Go local or global, right? Local capability for global execution, but you've got to get the people on the ground to do the doing. So
Right.
just go find the doers and get your hands dirty.
Right, great answer, thank you. Now, George, I'm going to turn to you, and I'm actually going to ask a question from the audience because this is a really great question. And it's from Lara Carton, who's my director, so not just the audience. So Lara asks, and I'm not just asking this because she's my boss, but it's because it's a very good question. She asks, what opportunities are there to partner with other LGAs in regional Queensland to consolidate waste streams to such a scale that you might be able to invest in shared technology to deal with the waste? For example, each LGA specialises in a different technology or waste stream.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Yeah, look, and we do explore those opportunities where we can. I mean, look, I go back to my point, distance is just huge. If you live in the southeast corner or in Melbourne, you know, Greater Melbourne area, then you've just got that concentration of population and industrial infrastructure. We are 8 hours up the road from Brisbane, and Mackay is further north again, Townsville, Cairns, do you know what I mean? Like these guys, you know, so we consolidate at regional level. So there's a regional player within each of the areas that you'd expect, and we're at the Central Queensland, although Gladstone might argue that point. You know, we definitely work at a Central Queensland level. But as the bigger player, we'll drive the agenda probably. So Glass, for instance, we've really driven that agenda because our internal teams are big enough to actually sort of create a demand. And we have to really sort of try and get the smaller councils around us to really then come on board. So we're doing the same with the polystyrene, for instance. But doesn't necessarily have to work like that. So Banana is an incredibly small shire council to the west of us. But because they're closer to the mine sites in Central Queensland, they've really been exploring some really interesting ideas, like, for instance, tyre pyrolysis to get rid of those huge mountains of mining tyres out west there. So there are always potential opportunities, but it is a tricky one because it is about scale. But look, the latest one on our agenda, and I did allude to it earlier, is solar panels. We're really keen to see a solution for solar panels because it's only going to get bigger. We've started diverting, but again, to put it into context, we've started diverting here. Rockhampton Regional Council, we've got about 90,000 residents in our region. In the first 2 weeks since we started diverting and charging for them at the gate, we diverted 400 panels. Sounds impressive. The guys that have a solution on the ship as we speak, and they're a Melbourne mob, I can't remember the name right off the top of my head, but they're looking to set up a regional operation, and it's kind of a modular operation. It comes in a container and you can basically park it up and start processing. They need 10,000 plus panels a year. So suddenly it just puts into context, you know what I mean, the scalability problems that we're sort of dealing with at that end of the sort of funnel, if you like, at the moment. So yes, sorry, rambling answer, but in short, we're definitely looking for any opportunities in that space, and where we can, we do. But yeah, scale really is an issue.
Thank you, and you know, you hit the nail on the head. It's often, you know, we're sitting here in Brizzy or any of the capital cities where we do have those scales and thinking, oh, we can just, you know, move those solutions to regional places. But even when you're aggregating some of those solutions, the tyranny of distance is still the tyranny, isn't it? Michelle, one for you. I was really thinking about, as you were talking through your presentation or speaking during your presentation, about the concept of values, and how often, especially when groups of disparate people come together and they start a new organisation or a new community initiative, often they don't talk about values. That conversation isn't had up front. So what advice would you give to people around actually having the conversation about values, putting it on the table?
There's a few different ways you can look at it. I mean, with the sharing shed that we started up, we came to that late in having that conversation. So you can have a conversation around what your group agreement is. It often is something that feeds into your mission. Sorry, I've got the battery running low. Let me get the electricity going. So when you're having the conversation about your mission, that is a prime place for you to be discussing what do you want, what's the change you want to make, what does wild success look like, how do you get there, how do you want to interact with each other, what do you want to get personally out of this, and what do you want to get within the group. So yeah, I think it's something that is really useful to have, and it's something that often comes up. I think when I do presentations, the people who show up to those tend to have similar values, very much aligned, and you learn as people come through the door, even if the values aren't aligned, they come for different reasons. So we don't all have to be lefty greeny, repairers. Some people just want their thing to work, or they want their kid's toy to last another 5 years. So, and that's fine. It's just I think we need to have some tolerance about different values that aren't opposed, but go in a common direction.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's a really fantastic answer. Yeah, as you talked about designing waste out of the supply chain earlier, what product types have you had the most success with? And are there any particular sectors of manufacturing that are more open to this type of innovation? And that's a question from one of our guests today.
Thank you for the question. It's excellent. And I suppose our biggest experience in this area is actually in the relationship we have with Officeworks, one of Australia's largest retailers, who 2 years ago did not expect that we would be providing data that allowed their buyers to create design demands that are very different for future products. And so it is definitely in relation to a lot of the work we're doing at manufacturer level with those larger scale manufacturers, right down to your smaller scale enterprises where we may have very small volumes of an item come in, and when we can deconstruct something and then provide the data back to our retailers to then demonstrate that, when you're creating a product, perhaps take away the plastic wrap from this because we've got such an abundance of plastic wrapping that we're having to recycle every time we open a product. Or can we think of a different material design of a product or a different shape of an item, because when it's being transported, there's a consistent break or weak point that then means the product is disposed of and not even used at a higher rate within the original life cycle of it. And I suppose in a more tangible way, when we're getting products for their second and third life, being able to actually understand the value of a product in its second and third life. When we get in a desk or a drawer or a plastic container or something else, how might we design the product in the first place to remove non-recyclable materials? So we might get an appliance in, and when we deconstruct that appliance, maybe there's non-recyclable products within there. So how do we design out that non-recyclable item? Or how do we make it easier to deconstruct the product so that the plastics, the metals, and the electricals are all able to go into their higher value streams with a less time requirement in the deconstruction of it? So while we're not a repair cafe ourselves, there's an element of repair that we do here, and we know some of the challenges in accessing some of the valuable materials within some products, or even in repairing it. So for us, it's around being strong advocates for capturing the data that allows the metrics to go back up the value chain, so that the designers in the manufacturing space, but also as retailers, are getting that tangible evidence, both visually in picture form, but also metrically in data form. And that's actually what we're seeing as the biggest change that we've been able to influence, right down to, I'm literally sitting and looking at the Officeworks report for the month of July that shows a deconstructed partition and where all the elements went, and then what a reconstructed partition looks like from a second life perspective, so that perhaps it's designed differently in its first life in the first place. So it's about sharing the data, and I think crushing silos of ownership of the information and being able to actually make it more publicly available so that people can take the elements of what we've found to design better products in the future.
Great, thank you. Well, we have about 30 seconds left according to my watch, so I just want to wrap up by thanking everybody here, not only our guests, but also our incredible, especially our incredible panelists. And I'm going to share my slides for one last time because if I can get them to move, I'd really love everybody who is online to just use their phone and take a little, whatever you do with the QR code, point your phone at the QR code, and there is a really simple 30-second survey to fill in. And it really helps us at the university understand, you know, is the Festival of Change doing the great stuff that we hope that it's doing and that we continue to do every year? And, you know, what would you like to see happen next year? So just wrapping up, again, thank you very much, George, Yaz, and Michelle, for your time and for your expertise. It's really been a fantastic session. I've really, really enjoyed it. And thank you to all of our guests who have joined us online today. Thanks.